Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopidana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopidana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajanana Yashodanandana Vrajajanana Yamana Tiravanachari Yamana Tiravanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Mr. Paramahamsa Parvajikacharya Shatashat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Jaya Vishnu Paramahamsa Parvajikacharya Shatashat Shri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Kantarashina Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaur Premanamne Hari Bol. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 9, Text 28. Now, don't I have multiple? Okay, so 28 and 29 through 30. So I'll read 28 and then we can repeat if anybody online wants to repeat 29 and 30. Shri Shukavacha itite Shamharaja Suranam Upatishtatam Pratityam Dishyapud Avi Shankachakra Gadadharaha. Shri Shukadev Goswami said, My dear king, when all the demigods offered him their prayers, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari, carrying his weapons, the conch shell, disc, and club, appeared first within their hearts and then before them. Text 29 and 30. Atmatulya Shodashabhir Vina Srivatsako Stulo Paryupasitam Unidra Sharad Ambuddha Hikshanam Trishvatam Avano Sarva Drishvatam avano sarva ikshana hlada viklavaha dandavat patita rajan chaner utaya tushtubuhu Atmatulya Shadashabhir Vina Shivatsakostubo Paryupa Sitamunidra Sharad Amburu Hikshanam Trishvatam Avano Sarva Ikshana Hlada Viklavaha Tandavat Patita Rajan Chanir Utaya Tushtuvuhu Atmatulya Shadashabhir Vina Shivatsakostubo Paryupasita Munidra Sharad Ambuddha Hikshanam Drishvatam Avano Sarva Ikshana Hlada Viklavaha Dandavat Patita Rajan Chanir Utaya Tushtuhu. Would anyone like to repeat?
Atmatulya Sudha Shabir Vina Shri Vatsakaustava Arya Pasitam Unidra Sharad Amburu Hekshanam Drishvatam Avana Sarva Ikshana Lada Viklavaha Pandavat Patita Rajan Chanar Utaya Tushtuvahu.
Thanks, Prabhu. Anyone else? Okay. Atmatulya, almost equal to himself. Shoda Shabhi by 16 servants. Bina without. Shivatsa Kostubho, the Shivatsa mark, and Kostuba jewel. Paryupasitam, being attended on all sides. Unidra, blooming. Sharat, of the autumn. Amburuha, like lotus flowers. Ikshanam, having eyes. Drishtva, seeing. Tam, him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana. Avano, on the ground. Sarve, all of them. Ikshana, from directly seeing. Ahlada, with happiness. Viklava, being overwhelmed. Dandavat, like a stick. Patita, fell. Rajan, O king. Shanai, slowly. Uttaya, standing up. Tushtuvuhu, offering prayers. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Surrounding and serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana were 16 personal attendants, decorated with ornaments and appearing exactly like him, but without the mark of Shivats and the Kaustubha jewel. O king, when all the demigods saw the Supreme Lord in that posture, smiling with eyes like the petals of lotuses grown in autumn, they were overwhelmed with happiness and immediately fell down like rods, offering dandavats. Then they slowly rose and pleased the Lord by offering him prayers. Purport. In Vaikuntha Loka, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has 4 hands and decorations like the Srivatsa mark on his chest and the gem known as Kaustubha. These are special indications of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord's personal attendants and other devotees in Vaikuntha have the same features, except for the Srivatsa mark and the Kaustubha gem. Om Jnanatimanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. So yesterday, for yesterday's verse, Nagari Krishna Prabhu was talking about that we have to take shelter somewhere. And the demigods are offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then in today's verse, the Lord actually appears before them. So he, appears as Lord Hari, and he's carrying all of his weapons, conch shell, disc, club, lotus flower, and appearing first within their hearts and then before them. And then this verse that has the purport is discussing how the appearance of Krishna and how beautifully he looks with the Srivatsa mark, Kaustubha jewel, and his eyes look like the petals of lotuses grown in autumn. And how he has his 16 personal attendants that look exactly like him, except without the Srivatsa mark and the Kaustubha jewel. And I was remembering somewhere in Bhagavatam, I think it was a couple maybe it was a couple chapters ago, or maybe I was reading with Y, the second canto, but it's described how on the Kaustubha jewel is there's a engraved. Does anybody know what's engraved on the Kaustubha jewel? Anyone remember? It's very cute. I mean, it's nice. It's a calf. A calf is engraved on the Kaustubha gem on his chest. So, yeah, so anyway, and then the next verse is discussing how the next couple verses are basically discussing more qualities and the amazing attributes of the Lord and all of his supreme opulence and power. And then Prabhupada takes the opportunity to explain how one should properly offer prayers to the Lord, and that basically inexperienced people in this world don't know how to properly offer prayers to God. Usually they want to go to him for some material benedictions. Um, and so basically, since people's minds are saturated by the material modes, they don't know what else to ask for other than material things, material benefits. And generally, people pray because they want to be promoted to a more opulent situation, whether that's heaven in, the Vedic understanding, or the next destination in terms of, yeah, any, I guess, other religions. Um, yeah, it's such an interesting conception, different conceptions different religions have of what it will be like when we get to heaven. I remember I don't know how I found this, maybe my grandma sent it to me, that after my great grandmother passed away, I wrote maybe I was like 7, and I wrote something about what, like some kind of eulogy or something to read at her funeral about what she's probably doing in heaven. And it was like, she's probably riding on like a golden golf cart because she liked to golf. And, she can eat whatever sweets she wants, like this and that. So, and I remember reading it just like a year ago, maybe as a devotee, and I'm like, whoa, that's what I thought. That was just like from, I don't know where I got that conception, probably movies or something like that. So, yeah, because our minds are saturated with the material modes, and because this middle planetary system, the Earth, has both happiness and distress, we just can only conceive of heaven as somewhere where our material desires can be fulfilled, and also that there's relief from all distress. So anyway, mainly, so that's the next verses. That's whoever's giving class tomorrow. But today I wanted to discuss more about Krishna's um, features, because to be attracted to someone, you have to know about them. So yeah, there's one example that's like, I'm trying to think of how the example goes. That basically, if you're in some sort of situation where, let's say, an arranged marriage or something like that, that really happens much here, but you know, or well, I guess your friend could like set you up with somebody, or even as devotees, like there's this person that lives on the other side of the world, and I think they'd be really good for you. And immediately it's like if you want to feel attraction for someone, you have to know about their qualities, right? So in perfection, this exists in our relationship with Krishna. We have to know something about Krishna in order to feel attraction to him. So I wanted to read a little bit from Nectar of Devotion, and there was somewhere else I wanted to read from. Let me try to remember. Oh, that's a whole different point. Anyway, we're going to go to Nectar of Devotion. And there's 2 chapters in particular. I'll probably read more from chapter 23, which is the personality of Krishna. But then there's also chapter 21 that and 22, which explain the qualities of Krishna. So anyway, you could read these all in your own time. I mean, they're quite lengthy because they're explaining the 64 different qualities of Krishna, and then the 4 that set him apart from, just his manifestation as Narayan. Does anybody know what those are? We can make it somewhat interactive. Tarika Prabhu, do you know the four things that set Krishna apart off the top of your head? Oh, okay, Vane, never mind. Vane is yelling it from behind the scenes. So maybe to do it. So yes, there's Krishna surrounded by his loving devotees. He's a performer of wonderful activities. He has his attractive flute and his exquisite beauty. So those are very nice. I hope to be able to remember all of them because I'll get them memorized for about a week and then somehow I forget one. But anyway, we can read chapter 23, Krishna's personality. It's quite short actually, so um, we'll just go through it and stop intermittently. So Krishna's personality. Srila Rupa Goswami states that although Lord Krishna is the reservoir of unlimited pleasure and the greatest leader of all, he is still dependent upon his devotees in three ways. According to the emotional status of the devotee, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is appreciated in three ways: as the most perfect, as very perfect, and as perfect. When he exhibits himself in fullness, he is appreciated by great learned scholars as most perfect. When he exhibits still less, he is called perfect. This means that Krishna is appreciated for 3 degrees of perfection. These 3 degrees of perfection are especially exhibited as follows. When he is in Goloka Vrindavan, his transcendental qualities are exhibited as most perfect. When he is in Dwarka, he exhibits his qualities as very perfect, and when he is in Mathura, he exhibits his qualities as perfect. So, well, anyway, I'll just read this one little short couple of sentences. Krishna's personality is analyzed as Tirodhata, Tira Lalita, Tira Prashanta, and Tira Tata. If one asks how a personality can be beheld in 4 quite opposing ways, the answer is that the Lord is the reservoir of all transcendental qualities and activities. Therefore, his different aspects can be analyzed according to the exhibition of his limitless variety of pastimes, and as such, there's no contradiction. So this is setting us up for, um, attempting to understand Krishna, which is so nice that we get access into even trying to understand the person that's completely inconceivable. But we'll see as we read like just a little bit of each section, this amazing quality of Krishna that, he can be beheld in 4 quite opposing ways, which is pretty inconceivable to us. I think the only way that we have, a glimpse into that is through the example of pure devotees. And specifically, I was thinking of Srila Prabhupada, that, he's like in a sense, kind of like a walking contradiction, so many different qualities exist in Srila Prabhupada, that, he's hard as a thunderbolt and soft as a rose, and could say things that seem apparently contradictory, but are perfectly applied according to person, time, place, circumstance. Um, yeah, it's pretty incredible. You don't really find that in the material world, that ability. Um, yeah, because I mean, the basis of Krishna consciousness, the basis of the philosophy is Achinta Beta Beta Tattva. So simultaneous oneness and difference, which is like you can't even we can't even wrap our uh minds around that. Material mind can't be wrapped around that. So if that's the basis of the philosophy, then pretty much everything subsequently is will also seem to the material mind contradictory, but actually is able to exist because Krishna is all encompassing. So let's go to the first one. So this is Tirodata. A Tirodata is a person who is naturally very grave, gentle, forgiving, merciful, determined, humble, highly qualified, chivalrous, and physically attractive. I'll just read one example from each. So I'll read the description and then one example from each section. In this connection, the following statement given by Indra, the king of heaven, is very significant. My dear Lord, I admit that I have committed great offenses unto you, but I cannot express my feelings of regret, being bewildered at seeing your extraordinary chivalrous spirit, your endeavor to protect your devotees, your determination, your steadiness in lifting the great hill of Govardhan, your beautiful bodily features, and your astonishing characteristic of being pleased simply by accepting the prayers of your devotees and offenders. And then it's explained in the last part of the section that Lord Ramachandra is also accepted as Tirodata, but that Lord Ramachandra's qualities are also included in the character of Krishna. So yeah, as we read on, you'll see how these all these different aspects of Krishna's personality are seemingly contradictory, like scratching your head. How come all these exist in one person? So okay, first one is yeah, we can think of like chivalrous, determined, merciful. And then second one is Tira Lalita. A person is called Tira Lalita if he's naturally very funny, always in full youthfulness, expert in joking, and free from all anxieties. Such a Tira Lalita personality is generally found to be domesticated and very submissive to his lover. This Tira Lalita trait in the personality of Krishna is described by Patni, the wife of one of the Brahmanas, who were performing sacrifices in Vrindavan. She tells her friends, one day Srimati Radharani, accompanied by her associates, was taking rest in her garden, and at that time Lord Sri Krishna arrived in that assembly. After sitting down, he began to narrate very impudently about his previous night's pastimes with Radharani. While he was speaking in that way, Radharani became very embarrassed. She was feeling ashamed and was absorbed in thought, and Krishna took the opportunity to mark her breast with different kinds of tilak. Krishna proved himself to be very expert in that art. In this way, Krishna, as Tira Lalita, was enjoying his youthful proclivities in the company of the gopis. Generally, those who are expert in writing drama choose to call Cupid the ideal Tira Lalita, but we can more perfectly find in the personality of Krishna all the characteristics of Tira Lalita. Okay, so first one we have, well, I guess we'll just try to summarize them, although there's a lot of qualities listed in each. First one's like chivalrous, and then the second one is kind of like carefree, joking, youthful. So even those two is like that's pretty inconceivable to try to figure out how both of those kind of personalities can exist within the same person. Maybe we could think of some example, maybe some devotee, or some person, that both of these are existing. But as we go on, it's going to get harder to think of how all these can exist. Um, yeah, in the same person. And even if all these different aspects could exist in one person, they'll never exist as perfectly as they exist in Krishna, and how he can display all of them without, any worries. Everything's just perfectly arranged for him to, come out as the topmost enjoyer. Not even necessarily as the hero, like because, this second one is Jira Lalita, that he's submissive to his lovers, but he's always coming out on top as the enjoyer. So, next one, Jira Prashanta. Person who's very peaceful, forbearing, considerate, and obliging is called Dhira Prashanta. This Dhira Prashanta trait of Krishna was exhibited in his dealings with the Pandavas. On account of the Pandavas' faithful devotion to the Lord, he agreed to become their charioteer, their advisor, their friend, their messenger, and sometimes their bodyguard. Such is an example of the result of devotional service toward Vishnu. When Krishna was speaking to Maharaj Yudhishthir about religious principles, he demonstrated himself to be a great learned scholar. But because he accepted the position of younger cousin to Yudhishthir, he was speaking in a very gentle tone, which enhanced his beautiful bodily features. The movements of his eyes and the mode of his speech proved that he was very, very expert in giving moral instructions. Sometimes Maharaj Yudhishthir is also accepted by learned scholars as Dhira Prashanta. So, yep, this is another one we could add to the list that is very, I mean, you could think of Dhira Prashanta, like Shanti, then very peaceful, considerate and obliging. And yes, we can definitely see this in the character of Yudhishthir Maharaj as well. And even he seems like, you know, in comparison to the personalities we see nowadays, Yudhishthir Maharaj also is completely beyond our conceptions, that basically he's the topmost administrator and he can administer justice. He's like Dharma personified. But at the same time, he's also very peaceful, forbearing, considerate, and obliging. I mean, I don't think that there's any like administrative head on the planet that's been able to, it's like running a whole country, or at least like a global hegemon or a corporation or something like that, that is simultaneously able to administer justice with great force and determination when necessary, but at the same time is very obliging, considerate, peaceful. It's like if you have those qualities, the latter, then you're pretty much going to be walked all over. And the test of a good administrator now is basically if they can um, administer like brute force. How many civilians have you killed in this country that we want to dominate? Or let's say there's a country that's more peaceful, Switzerland or New Zealand, for example, then it's kind of like a joke. The administration, it might be peaceful, well, peaceful in the modern conception. Of course, there's so much cow killing going on and the population is quite degraded, but let's say that the administrator, they're known as a peace-loving country, or Costa Rica is like that too. Uh, then it's kind of like a joke, because, okay, well, we're not going to get involved in any wars, but if someone were to go and attack that country, then they'd be calling on, their allies, the US or wherever else, Australia, like, come, help me, help me. So it's seen as a weakness, but it can exist in Krishna along with his chivalrous spirit and his joking mood. And then the last one is Tirodata. A person who is very envious, proud, easily angered, restless, and complacent is called Tirodata by learned scholars. Such qualities were visible in the character of Lord Krishna, because when he was writing a letter to Kalyavana, Krishna addressed him as a sinful frog. In his letter, Krishna advised Kalyavana that he should immediately go and find some dark well for his residence, because there was a black snake named Krishna who was very eager to devour all such sinful frogs. Krishna reminded Kalyavana that he could turn all the universes to ashes simply by looking at them. Now, a clarification offered by Srila Prabhupada. The above statement by Krishna seems apparently to be of an envious nature, but according to different pastimes, places, and times, this quality is accepted as a great characteristic. Krishna's Tirodhata qualities have been accepted as great because Krishna uses them only to protect his devotees. In other words, even undesirable traits may also be used in the exchange of devotional service. Sometimes Bhima, the second brother of the Pandavas, is also described as Tirodata. Okay, so we'll just stop there with Tirodata. So yeah, this last one is very funny. Krishna writing the letter to Kalyavana. Um, I can't remember. Is that in Krishna book? I'm just thinking of how, he chases Kalyavana, or Kalyavana chases Krishna into the cave and then kicks Muchakunda, and then Muchakunda turns him with his eyes, his glance. So yeah, this is also very funny and adds to Krishna's enjoyment and also adds to our enjoyment and just the flavor of, reading about these pastimes that we can see materially, we would like to read about something like this. Some, people hurling insults at each other like that is very enjoyable. There's so many TV shows, movies, uh, like that. I'm trying to think, there's some other pastime that I'm thinking of where Krishna insults one of the demons. And I can't remember which one it is. Anyway, some of them are so funny. Because Krishna, it shows his cleverness too, not just humor, but also he's very intelligent. So, and knows exactly how to, provoke the demons as well. So then this last part of this chapter, Prabhupada, I don't want to read. Okay, I'll just read this one last paragraph of this chapter because Prabhupada summarizes things very nicely. He says, there's a nice statement in the Korma Purana about these contradictory traits of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated there that the Supreme Person is neither very fat nor very thin. He is always transcendental to material qualities, and yet his bodily luster is blackish. His eyes are reddish, he is all-powerful, and he is equipped with all different kinds of opulences. Contradictory traits in Krishna's person are not at all surprising. One should not consider the characteristics of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to be actually contradictory. One should try to understand the traits of Krishna from authorities and try to understand how these characteristics are employed by the supreme will of the Lord. Hmm. So, yeah, I'll just stop there. And then it goes on to like explain further traits of Krishna and then the devotees of Krishna. So, yeah, nectar of devotion, if you want to, both hear about the different rasas with Krishna and get a guidebook, at least in the beginning part for sadhana bhakti, and then in the later parts for what you know what are Krishna's qualities, so becoming attracted to Krishna, and then in the end, how devotees operate in relation to Krishna in the perfectional stage. Then Nectar of Devotion is the handbook, as Prabhupada says in the introduction. What did he say? He wrote this book for his devotees. So yeah, it's a book meant to be read and discussed amongst the devotees. I remember distributing them. I think we just had extra or something in Atlanta and giving them out to people. I don't know if Nectar of Devotion was like a widely distributed book in the beginning, like in the 70s, or I guess yeah, mainly in the 70s. But whenever I would give it to people in the street, I'd say something like, "This is like the guidebook to love on the spiritual platform, or spiritual love, or something like that." Or I give it to couples and be like, "This is you. You can learn from this how to actually love your partner." I guess that's in an extended sense, having Krishna in the center. But it always felt very like it's a very confidential kind of thing. Even Krishna book, like giving to kids and saying, read it to your kids at bedtime, and then you like read through Krishna book. And of course, it's very enjoyable. But if you've never come in contact with Krishna consciousness before, and then you're like reading that to your 5-year-old at bed, like certain parts is like, whoa, this is intense. So anyway, Nectar of Ocean is a great book, but I often, and not but, and I often think if I'm happen to be giving that to somebody as their introduction to Krishna consciousness, like, whoa, they don't know what's coming. But if they take it very seriously, then yeah, they can immediately get so injected with so much Krishna consciousness if they just keep reading and have a humble attitude. So, coming back to the point, um, I was talking about, just the wonders of nectar devotion. And so we can see, like I said, to become attracted to Krishna, we have to know something about Krishna. And it's like we're trying to know the unknowable. So, as we just read, there's so many contradictions that exist within Krishna. It, for example, just these 4 different aspects of his personality. But it's so relishable. It's so nice to hear about. And like in the mornings here for a couple minutes, most mornings, right after Tulsi Puja, Venu will read from maybe 3 or 4 minutes from the Nectar of Devotion, which is so nice to hear. Some of them, just hearing it read out loud, some of the pastimes are so humorous. Either like, it's really it's such an emotional book, actually. It's just a book full of emotions where you're like, aw, and the next thing you're laughing, and then you're like confused, and it's just the full range of emotions and bhakti, and that's really what Krishna wants, is the heart investment, the heart to be moved, tugged this way and that way, and up and down and side to side, just by, the relationship with Krishna, hearing about that relationship, hearing about the pastimes. And in that way, our heart is actually fulfilled because, we think like, oh, I just want happiness. That's what I'm looking for in this life. But actually, the heart wants so many different flavors of emotions that it wants like, um, I mean, yeah, we can even see this in the context of, well, friendships or family or romantic relationships that, you know, okay, yes, we want happiness as the predominating theme. That's like, why I guess we would add a relationship into our lives or maintain a relationship like that. But there's also so much flavor in having the heart, tug this way and that, even if we say, oh, we don't like misunderstandings, we don't like fights, we don't like, I don't know, so many other things that seem distasteful, but actually they like there is some attraction to them because they're like adding to the rasa. We might not like proactively seek it out, or some people do. I mean, there's also, yeah, some people do just within their relationships, and then some people even go so far as like they're masochists. So obviously, it's not just, happiness that we want, but it's really the intensity of the emotion and the flavor of different emotions that we want. And so whenever we read Nectar of Devotion, uh, one, we can see that like, oh, well, actually, I think for at least for myself, and I've heard it said by Dave Marie Maharaj that it's like you have to read Nectar of Devotion at least 7 times before it starts to click and make sense. And I don't know how many times I've read it, maybe like 4, like cover to cover by myself, but a lot with other devotees as well. And then it's finally starting a little bit to dawn on like how these seemingly distasteful emotions, like even, I mean, I'm not going to claim that I understand anything about like love and separation and this and that, but you kind of get little glimpses into like, oh, it's such a painful like material emotion, but I can see maybe how just a little bit how with um with a spiritual relationship, like these, not just separation but anger, all these things can actually add to the intensity and the flavor and the enjoyment of the relationship. So yeah, whenever you read Nectar of Devotion, one thing is that you start to get at least a theoretical conception of like, oh, I could see how, that might be the case in the spiritual world. And then not only do you get the theoretical conception, but you also, Krishna is giving you, and Srila Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami, all giving a taste of how that could factually be so, because you're just, like I said, you're just reading these little paragraph snippets, like one after another, of different scenarios that Krishna is in with his devotees of just pure enjoyment, but it's like in every different color and every different shade. So it's very beautiful. And then the more times you read it, I've found, at least personally, the more relishable it becomes, specifically with Nectar of Devotion. I've been able to see that. Um, yeah, I mean, that's the goal. I pray and ask for everyone's blessings that, I can continue to read Prabhupada's books and they become more and more relishable instead of just having the attitude of, oh yeah, I've read this before. It's the same information. I know this information. Even that's a bit of a stretch for me, though I can't really remember the past times so much. So the one other point that I wanted to make on this this verse today is that is that yeah, basically Krishna is distinguished by these features. So the Shrivats and the Kaustubha jewel, distinguished even from his personal attendants who look exactly like him, except for these 2 features. And the thing that popped into my mind was in Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna is showing Arjuna his universal form. And basically, if one says that they are God, for example, which of course we act in that way nowadays, but I don't really hear that many people, other than Kanye West. I will say Kanye West. I don't know if he said I am God. I think he said I am a God. But other than him, there's not that many people walking around saying I am God. Maybe back when there was a lot of quote unquote gurus and this and that coming over to the US, maybe that was more common. Um, but anyway, Prabhupada makes the point that, if someone claims that they're God, then they should be prepared to show their universal form. Because Krishna has these distinguishing features, like I was just saying, nectar devotion as well. There's those four that distinguish Krishna even from Narayan or Vishnu. So, yeah, if one wants to claim to be the supreme personality of Godhead, the supreme enjoyer or controller, then they have to be prepared to show these certain aspects of themselves. But, you know, even if somebody of this living in this material world gets a headache, they're completely knocked off their feet. So, we want to act like we're the supreme enjoyers and supreme controllers, but even something like a little headache or like one of those ones that's like behind your eye, behind your forehead, like that, or we have one resident on the farm that's been dealing with some very, very intense headaches, and you're just completely incapacitated. Like you can't do anything. So how can we claim to be the supreme controllers and supreme enjoyers if just one little seemingly random occurrence, even if you're well hydrated and, you know, the weather isn't different, it's not like it's raining or there's some pressure differential or something like that, then still it just randomly comes upon you. Or if you stub your toe or something like that, then you're in so much pain and you're not you're not the enjoyer then. Like even, or you get a paper cut on your pinky or something like that, maybe it becomes infected. It's like just not even a square centimeter of space, your pinky or your toe can cause you so much distress and just ruin your whole day. But still, we're like, oh, but I'm gonna enjoy, but I have hopes, that if I just control the situation exactly right and manipulate the situation, that's what's so attractive about money too, is that there's the illusion that you're gonna be able to control the situation. And so in that way, formulate your own happiness, but it's been proven time and time again that that's not true. Um, then you'll get enjoyment. I was just taking this poll yesterday for yeah for something, and it said one of the questions was, do you think that money can buy happiness? And I think the answers were yes, no, and maybe unsure or I don't know. And I clicked no, and then uh, it shows you the results of like all the people that have answered that question. And I thought that most people were going to click no. And it was like a 50-50 split pretty much. I was shocked. I'm like, wow, 50% of the people think that is a very popular poll. 50% of the people still think that money can buy happiness. Even though that quote is so popular, money can't buy happiness. That quote is like everywhere. And like still there's this like illusion. So yeah. Anyway, I think I'm gonna stop here because I pretty much said all that I have to say, there is to say about this verse for me. So does anybody have any comments or reflections? Realizations about reading Nectar of Devotion?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I want to thank you for a spectacular class. That was fabulous. I really enjoyed hearing about Krishna's qualities, some of them. It's always wonderful to hear anything about Krishna. Um, and there's so much to appreciate about Krishna. You can go on, and every characteristic has endless depth. Just when you think you're understanding, then you realize there's so much more to understand, and it just goes on and on endlessly. Anyway, it's delightful to hear these things. I thank you for that. Nectar Devotion, such a wonderful book, so full of Krishna. It's so full of so much about Krishna. And yes, absolutely, we need to understand something about Krishna if we're to have any hope of developing love for Krishna. But Nectar Devotion takes us so far along that path of getting to know the personality of Krishna. Such an amazing book, amazing. Back in the day when Nectar Devotion first was printed, we did distribute it very widely. We didn't have a lot of books to distribute, but as soon as Nectar Devotion came into print, everyone was madly reading it and distributing it with great enthusiasm because we appreciated what a wonderful book it was. We used to back in the day of the Prabhupada sandwich, when we had both Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita classes daily, the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita class was 15 minutes of reading from Nectar Devotion. So we got at least that much every day, and it was wonderful. So much Krishna consciousness. Everyone in the temple, and the New York temple where I grew up was action-packed, a lot of devotees, and everyone full of Krishna Katha all the time. It was just an ocean of Krishna Katha, wall-to-wall Krishna Katha all day, every day, and absolutely ecstatic, just unbelievable. Devotees were just bouncing off the ceiling in ecstasy. It was such a wonderful place. Nectar Devotion, so nice. Um, well, I had so many thoughts. I can't remember all of the things that I wanted to
What
say.
did you tell
Um,
people whenever you were distributing it? Like, what would you tell people the book was about?
oh my God, I can't really remember. It's an age ago, and there were so many things that we distributed, so many different things that we did. Um, but what you described was very similar. You know, we the effort was to try to um, present the books on their own merits, um, just to describe what we ourselves appreciated about the books. Um, we would always try to place the book in the hands of a potential purchaser, um, and then turn the pages for them, and especially show them the images, the color plates, which are very attractive, and anything that a person can appreciate about these books. Even briefly for a few moments, even if they don't purchase, just by appreciating, they will make advancements. So we would try to give them an opportunity to appreciate something. We would show them the pages of the book, the length of the book, the detail of the book, the beautiful color plates, the covers, the reviews, and in whatever way we could, we try to present the books in a way that would help people to appreciate them. Um, and so, wonderful if they, would become intrigued enough to actually buy it. But even if they didn't, if they at least walked away appreciating that, that was a wonderful book, then there was hope for us that, this individual will get an opportunity to render devotional service again. Perhaps it may be a lifetime or a few lifetimes from now, but once again, they'll get a chance to meet devotees and a chance to appreciate these books again. So that was part of our focus to try to evoke um, uh, the appreciation in the individuals that we met. Hey, one other thing I thought I would make mention of. You were talking about um, the apparent dichotomy of different characteristics in Krishna and even his devotees, and how curious it is that sometimes conflicting or contradictory characteristics are simultaneously manifested in a single personality. And you mentioned Srila Prabhupada being soft as a rose, hard as a thunderbolt. And the key to understanding that characteristic of Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada was not alone in this. Um, this is I think, probably a standard characteristic for advanced devotees in general, because um, how it manifests is that um, the sense of urgency that a pure devotee has about um, propagating love for Krishna is so great, so intense. It it evokes very powerful emotions. Um, a devotee like Srila Prabhupada has a great um, sense of duty, but also a great sense of affection for all of Krishna's parts and parcels. He wants to um, to instill in them Krishna consciousness and nurture that Krishna consciousness. And very importantly, he wants to protect them from any sort of harm. That nurturing and protective aspect of a pure devotee's character is what brings about the hardness. So Srila Prabhupada would sometimes respond to certain circumstances with um, sometimes very harsh words delivered at maximum decibel. I have witnessed some devastating chastisements, fists pounding on desks and shouting and terrifying, terrifying deliveries. Um, I could tell you stories, but um, but what it's all about is Srila Prabhupada desperately trying to protect a devotee from harm, trying to protect them from their own senses, trying to protect them from their mind, trying to protect them from offenses, trying to protect them from fall down, trying to protect them from all kinds of mistakes that would harm themselves and others. So he would do whatever was necessary to deliver a message in a way that would get through and would never be forgotten. And sometimes what works for some individuals is a really severe blasting. But devotees who have experienced that will say that they would not have it any other way, that it was a wonderful blessing for them. And of course, they never forgot it, and they derived tremendous benefit. Um, so it was always Srila Prabhupada's great mercy on devotees when he would be hard and heavy with them. But it was always out of love, Srila Prabhupada's extraordinary love for his disciples. And my God, he loved his disciples so much. He would do anything for his disciples. And it included sometimes being really hard. sometimes being really soft and gentle and affectionate, and sometimes being hard as a thunderbolt. Um, you mentioned also talking about trying to understand some of the very elevated aspects of um, um, emotions for Krishna. Um, And so for example, topmost of all, Madhurya Ras, and particularly love in separation, hard sometimes for people to wrap their head around. But the key to understanding all of these different emotions, dread, or whatever it may be, which seems maybe contradictory and hard to understand. That the key to understanding is that whatever it is pleasing to Krishna because it means um, very, very intensified concentration on Krishna by the devotee. The emotion uh, induces one to think of Krishna with tremendous intensity, greater than what one could normally muster. And that is extremely pleasing to Krishna. And when Krishna is pleased, then the devotee is automatically pleased because that's our constitutional position. Our relationship with Krishna simply works in that way. Our pleasure is Krishna's pleasure. When he is satisfied, then we become satisfied. So even a devotee is devastated by separation from Krishna. The result is that the devotee is fixed in um, the the most intense meditation on Krishna, and so it becomes the topmost Krishna consciousness. Krishna is pleased, the devotee is pleased, everyone is pleased. It's ecstatic. But outwardly, the appearance is this terrible separation, horrible emotion from a material perspective. But in spiritual life, it's the topmost Krishna consciousness. And so it's wonderful and the greatest ecstasy. Anyway, through all my thoughts. We're out of time. Thank you for a wonderful class. I really appreciate your classes. They are uh, well thought out and delivered with eloquence. Wonderfully articulate you are. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru. Hare Krishna. The last thing you're saying is making me think of I forget where it is in the Bhagavatam, but Narada Muni is glorifying the demons or praying that he can think of Krishna, with the same intensity that they're meditating on him. So, yeah, that point you were making about how, like I don't even know like the barometer of how pleasing it is to Krishna is the intensity of the thoughts. Of course, we shouldn't, Prabhupada cautions us that we shouldn't think of Krishna in an unfavorable way, but just that prayer of Narada Muni came to mind. So thank you. Okay, we are out of time and the doors are about to open. So thank you, devotees. Grantar Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.